I understand what freedom of speech is, which is like you can say whatever and you shouldn't feel oppression from, especially from the government. I understand that. But to be honest, the freedom of speech, quote unquote, in America, especially a lot of pressure coming from the White House, especially the previous administration, when you say stuff that doesn't align with the mainstream narrative, your job, your livelihood kind of get canceled. And just look at what happened with Charlie Kirk. All right, welcome back to Common Sense. I'm your host, Dave. Today we're going to react to freedom of speech in America. I talked about this many different times, and I heard a great discussion between Joe Rogan and Caleb Hammer on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. And let's listen in, and I'll react to it with my perspective as a Chinese immigrant looking at the freedom of speech.
You're saying earlier about social media and these echo chambers is really important because in their world, this is the only thing to do. And that all just gets this feedback loop where it's the right thing to do, the only thing to do. And they come up with reasons why it's not working and then call everybody Nazis.
Yeah, and that's why also those echo chambers are why, when polled, younger people are more okay with violence against people on the other side of the political aisle from them, which is a very scary place to go.
Yeah.
It's very scary, especially when I see death threats all the time in my inbox and, doxing and shit like that. They call me a fascist for saying don't spend more money than you make. Okay, so I'm a fascist. Now I'm afraid for my life and I have to get security and all this stuff. It's crazy.
So you get threats for, like, what specifically do they get upset at? It's literally just saying don't spend your money?
It's everything. They don't like that I do roasts. Consensual roasts. Like I call a fat bitch a fat bitch. But I had the conversation with her before. And if she didn't want me to, I wouldn't have done that. Because we have a no-no list where people get to say what they don't want us to talk about. And then I just won't talk about that.
This ghetto culture of like death threat in America is so common. I do games. And I got death threat for doing games, like online. It makes no sense. Like I totally see what it's doing, what it's saying here. By the way, for those who don't know, about Caleb Hammer, this is he does financial channels, and he debates people, looking at their audits people and look at their finances and just call them dumb stuff. But again, they talk to each other beforehand and then get consensual agreement. Okay, this is what I want to do in the show, so be careful. Bro, like this is so weird. And I want to give my first take on freedom of speech, right? I understand what freedom of speech is, which is like you can say whatever and you shouldn't feel oppression from, especially from the government. I understand that. But to be honest, the freedom of speech, quote unquote, in America, especially a lot of pressure coming from the White House, especially the previous administration, when you say stuff that doesn't align with the mainstream narrative, your job, your livelihood kind of get canceled. And just look at what happened with Charlie Kirk. Right, he was simply debating people on campuses, and then you can agree or disagree with him, but to assassinate somebody over their ideas, over a civil debate, is insane. And that only happens in America. I wouldn't say only, but modern days you only see that on the internet, and that's coming from America. And I said in my previous video, the freedom of speech in my shorts, the freedom of speech. In China, for example, the government, the state, usually don't interfere with civil matters. People can say whatever, just day-to-day life, and government just won't interfere. They don't care. They have more important stuff to deal with: AI, technology, energy, all that kind of stuff, right? Solar. But here, I feel like the state, especially the previous administration, is always interested in getting into the social debate. And not only that, it feels like the day-to-day life you go through, instead of being a civilized debate about ideas, like, Jordan Peterson. I love to listen to those debates because it's very intelligent. And not just Jordan Peterson, but his opponent usually have a lot of great ideas, and they just constantly debate each other. And then you really get to think, okay, which one makes more sense for yourself? But what you notice is here is a guy called Charlie Kirk was debating somebody on campus. He got shot. That is so crazy, That is so crazy. I don't know the exact issue with that is, but it scares people. It makes you scared to go to public spaces. It terrorizes people in a way because that's an action of terrorism, to be honest, because it just scares you. And that's the definition of terrorism, to scare you away from doing something that you wanted to do. So that's what I was saying. Freedom of speech in America is not really free. People think it's free. Oh, well, you're misunderstanding it. It's, oppression from the government. No, nobody cares, right? Again, Chinese government don't even interfere with your day-to-day social discussions. But here, you actually worry about your life. I don't really care, if, from the government or not. If for Charlie Kirk, do you think he cared if his life was ended by the government or by a random ass guy, on a roof somewhere? It doesn't matter. The sad story is he still died. from some hateful person. So this is the same thing. Like, in my opinion, it's the same thing. Like freedom of speech in America, it's free, but it's also not, because there's a heavy risk, much heavier risk, just in general, for you to speak out loud, right? Like it's so, coming from a Chinese immigrant perspective, a standpoint, we observe it, we see it, and that's why most of the Chinese immigrants don't say shit, because like people are really good with self-preservation. Me too, right? I mostly observe, and now I just share a little bit of thoughts from an observer standpoint. But frequently, by large, most of the political belief, I simply don't care to get into it. I simply don't care of what people believe. I respect either side's opinion. I think all of them make sense. At the end of the day, whoever wins, whoever gets the power, wins the day, right? That's how power works, how hard enemy works. It's interesting to observe, but I don't care which side. I think both of them have points sometimes, only sometimes.
But
Well, that's very nice of you.
it is very nice. That's because we try to run, a moral, consensual show, all that good stuff. But I love to roast people and just call out their features and just dumb shit like that. So people get offended by that, offended on behalf of someone who's not offended in the first place, and then they get very angry. I got a death threat on Twitter yesterday for saying Americans spend too much money on cars.
Wow.
He said I should that it's crazy that Caleb Hammer is still breathing air and that he should come up from San Antonio and kill me or something. I don't remember. It was something like that. It's kind of crazy because Americans spend too much money on cars.
Maybe he sells cars.
Maybe, but objectively we do.
Did you check his profile? Is it a real person?
It said San Antonio. That's all I
To be honest, like if you want to do political content, you should live in US. You should live in another country. You should go to Thailand or some shit. The internet is free. It's open to everybody. Just go to some other country and do political commentator, right? We don't do political commentary at all. We just do cultural, react to cultural stuff that's happening. But this is what I meant regarding freedom of speech, right? He says something about cars, you get death threat about somebody coming from San Antonio. Most likely is a troll, but just the fact that is happening. Like, I think that type of death threat should be reportable to the police, to be honest, because like death threat should not be protected. It's not protected by freedom of speech, I believe, right? First Amendment. It should be reportable. It's just that's really hard. It's on the internet, and it's also such a tiny issue. And the police probably feel like it's not worth their time. Because they get so many reports anyways about random ass stuff.
know. That's all I know. I'm sure it was like a
Could be a bot.
second profile. He was responding to it. He was excited. He got his
Could be a
attention.
crazy person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get emails all the time. No, people think I'm evil because they say I don't talk about the issues that led us here in the first place. But it's a personal responsibility show because more people have agency than they're willing to acknowledge.
Right.
Like we're in the highest disposable income society in the history of human existence. Not everything's perfect. Cost of housing's gone up. Cost of school's gone up. Cost of healthcare's gone up. We can acknowledge those realities. But people have agency. People have agency. The amount of going out to eat among the Generation Z is insane compared to any other generation. And not only that, but now for 25% of their going out to eat multiple times a week is getting food delivered. And that has a 90% markup. 90%. And then
By the way, it's so true. But I want you to do a simple exercise for those who don't know, by the way. If you go on Uber Eat, like for example, my favorite burger place called Hop Dottie in Austin, and then you get a burger there. If you look at a Hop Dottie menu, if it's $13, it usually goes to $16 or $17 on the Uber Eat. Okay, that's the starting price. And then you pay a delivery fee, you pay a service fee, you pay like tips, you pay tax. Those fees and add on top of it. So the only time that Uber Eats makes sense is when they give you 50% off. And then when you order for 2 people or less, because they give a $15 maximum discount. That means if you order for 2 people or less, you probably pay the same amount of price if you normal price if you order something with a normal delivery. If you don't do that, if you don't get a 50% discount, it's always a huge markup. That's why like meal prep is so goated. You're saving same amount of money and you eat extremely good. Like I buy stuff from Whole Foods. And I still eat cheaper than I would say a lot of my peers because just go out to eat too much. They get Uber Eats, all they waste a bunch of money. We buy the organic, pasture-raised chicken or whatever at just meal prep. And on average, it's still cheaper. And by the way, for those who think that's still too expensive, doesn't matter. You can go to Walmart, buy organic, even non-organic, doesn't matter. I think organic is a marketing scam, to be honest. But some people don't believe in that. You don't have to at all. It's debatable. It doesn't matter. The point is you can buy really cheap and really healthy whole foods, right? I'm not talking about whole food, but the brand. I'm talking about just like apple, vegetables, right? And you can buy like meat, large chunk of low fat, high protein meat, and just meal prep for a week. It takes you 1 or 2 hours to prepare for a whole week. It literally doesn't take time. I mean, it does take time, but it's really easy time, small time. But people are just lazy, right? They'd rather just sit there and do nothing. And they blame they have no time, but they have tons of time. They chose to do other things. They chose to sleep until 2 p.m. in the afternoon and not work out and say, oh, I have no time, you know? But if you look at your calendar, you have a lot of times, especially on the weekend. You just, a matter of priority, what you decide to do with that time. You know, but you can totally meal prep. He's totally right.
They're complaining that they can't afford to pretty much do anything, get a nice apartment or whatnot. But if we're spending like $1,000 a month, which is very normal for a person on my show, going out to eat, you're right. You can't get a apartment of your dreams when $1,000 a month is going to McDonald's and other places. Cooking at home's become like a burden, become a victim complex now. Well, actually, that was another thing that triggered the internet. I kind of agreed with Kevin O'Leary when it said, oh, young people are broke because they spent $28 going out to eat. Well, it's not that specifically only, but it's the death of of 1,000 cuts. And yes, just $28 3 times a week becomes an actual halfway decent retirement fund if you put it in the S&P 500 for a
Absolutely.
few times a week. That does put off future goals that you have. And the internet went crazy against me. They hated me for suggesting that they shouldn't be able to. They're like, well, how do we eat? Well, groceries, meal prep, meal plan. This is what everyone's done since forever. We live in the best period ever for humans. Best period ever. Our jobs are better. Everything's better. Even when you think of like buying the starter home in the 50s and whatever, you know, they were like the size of this room that we're in right now, mass produced. Okay, that's still a home that's great you could buy, but you were going to a job that you hated, that you were sweating, that had no AC, where you're working with your hands all day, and it was miserable. They didn't like the jobs. They liked that they had a good paying job. But now people go to the office and they think they're a victim for not being able to meal prep before going to the office, the AC'd office. Like, it's hard for me to sympathize with that, especially when I film 3 of them a week. All 100% real people, mostly Gen Z and millennials, who are absolute victims in everything. They are victims in everything. They think if they don't get a 2027 brand new car instead of a 2025 car, that they're going to die.
You see, that's why Asian community, the Chinese immigrants, the Asian on average, the Indian community here are bypassing every single demographics, right? Because we don't treat ourselves as victims. We understand where we came from, and we just work hard. Like majority of the immigrant psychology is we appreciate, and we're very thankful for the opportunity America in general has given every single one of us, right? Because like this is literally the best opportunity and you can find anywhere in the world financially. America. You know, you come here, you work hard. You can work. By the way, when I say work hard, I'm talking about American standard. If you work Asian standard, you can really do well, right? But if you work American standard, you work hard, you find a good job, you go to school, right? Or if you're willing to do Asian standard, which is like on the side of your job, instead of spending time with your friend and hang out, be like, oh, that's everybody does that. No, you don't have to do what everybody does. You can do something different. On the side of the time, you try to learn some financial books, right? For example, the blockchain, right? Right now, everybody's learning AI and blockchain together. Well, do something, create something you can do really well. And that's literally what the Asian community have done for I don't know how many years. And that's why they're surpassing everybody, right? Especially Indians here. They only learn STEM. And then they use those degrees to find insanely well-paying jobs. And they work on the side and, you know, start businesses. So it is what it is, right? Like, but it's up to you whether you want to learn, you want to be an Asian level difficulty or American hard level difficulty. Either way, if you work hard, you're going to do well in America. What I notice is the trend as from an immigrant standpoint is overall there is a huge victimhood like mentality here for some reason. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just what I noticed, right? Like I've said this example before. I'm going to say it again, right? I have in my space when I work with people from production companies, I'll give an example. I'm not going to say where, I'm not going to say who, right? But I'll give it a very specific example. There's one time we're in a production shoot. We're on set, right? There is the controller, right, off the one of the equipment that deal with she was a director. She was directing specifically the VMix show, right, for one of the production that we need to do. And what happened was at 12 o'clock's lunch, and then there was but the production company messed up for one of the for the show, so they delayed to get everything prepared. All right. So everything I'm saying, the simple way of putting it is we're in a time crunch. 3 o'clock p.m. was when the show needed to begin. Here's a 12 o'clock p.m., right? And we're 3 hours away from the show began. The show wasn't even ready. So me as a PM, right, project manager, I was obviously worried, So at 12 p.m., when I get to the venue, it's the venue's problem. And then the show wasn't ready. The director they hired didn't get the show ready in time, right? Okay, so she was apparently at 12 p.m. needed to eat food. And it took her 15 minutes to finish the food, right? She already finished. She was just sitting there doing nothing. And I noticed, because I was looking at this show, I was trying to make sure everything was ready. I was going through them. I looked at one of the pages she prepared, and there was a typo there. So I was telling her, yo, can you change this word? Remind you, she was sitting next to the VMix machine desk and doing absolutely nothing, just looking at her phone, right? So initially she was sitting straight, looking at the screen. I pointed out to her, there's a typo there. She looked at me once, all bizarre, like, why are you calling me during my lunch break? And then looked away. And then just ignored me. Bro, that had me I was so baffled. I was like, okay, I understand it's lunch break. It's not that big of a deal, right? You can say that, hey, don't bother me. Or you can say something. You didn't say anything. She didn't recognize, she didn't acknowledge, she didn't say anything. Just looked away. It was like the most craziest thing ever. Because if this is an Asian company, an Asian production set, she's fired. Immediately on the spot. She's fired instantly. But in America, this is considered I'm the bully, right? For simply asking her to correct a typo. But obviously I didn't, go bother with it. I just write it down and then I hand it over to the venue staff later. So they can correct it an hour later, supposedly the hour lunch break, right? I understand the lunch break, but you're also finished your lunch. Common sense would tell you, just fix it. But I'm pretty sure at the same time, she will go back and say how much of a dick I am, That's just one example of difference between American work hard versus Asian work hard. In our dictionary, you don't finish the job, you don't eat. You know what I mean? Like, that's the bottom line. And that's why, like, all those companies, that when they have workers in China, they find out they progress so much faster because the mentality is different. And that's the bottom. It's basically a cultural difference. Also, why Apple progressed so fast in general, because a lot of people, Asian immigrants who worked in America, they work in different tech companies. They notice Apple works very similar to Chinese culture because they've learned. So how they implement it is like, I don't want to in my company, I don't want you to work like how any other American company work. I want you to work like until you finish your job, right? So this is a very, very different culture, I would say.
All of a sudden, cars 2 years ago were the most dangerous things. They have to get a $60,000 to $70,000 car loan at a 20% interest rate, or else their kids will die.
You've actually had that conversation?
Oh,
where they think
time.
that they're gonna die?
No, because the excuses they use is that I wanted a safe car for my kids. That's fine. But is the insinuation that 2024, 2023, 2022 cars would literally go on the highway and blow up? Like, I don't understand. They insist if they don't get a brand new car, that it is not a safe car.
I have a 2011 Prius. It's one of the most reliable car I ever owned. It's so good. It's so cheap. The insurance cheap. The maintenance cheap. Everything is cheap. The car is goated, right? The gas mileage is insane. I love the car. When I bought it, I loved it. I still love it now. In fact, I don't see it changing anytime soon. I want to change it, but with current interest rate, it's not looking likely. And I don't need to change a car. So it's going to be still a car that I use for a long, long time.
That is an argument every time with Americans. The $1.6 trillion or $1.5 trillion in car loan debt.
So do you think that's just a lack of education? Because like a car from 2020 is just as safe as a car from 2026. There's no difference.
Absolutely.
I think it's just comparison culture, right? The social media, because you're not comparing with the rest of the world. You have to have the coolest shit, the most advanced shit, the most luxury bags. All your friends have it. I should have it too. I think that's what it is.
Absolutely.
There's no difference in airbags, no difference in anti-lock brakes. There's very few differences in any of the technology involved. In fact, I tell people, especially people that want a nice car, one of the best investments you can get is get an electric car that's about 2 years old. Electric Porsches and electric Audis in particular, fucking nobody wants them, man. Nobody wants the used ones. And they're still great.
Oh, yeah.
And I
don't know about that. I look at those stats. I feel like electric Porsches have very little mileage. Unless you're only strictly driving within city, I don't know. Like if you're driving, if you're just trying to go from Austin to Dallas, you probably have to stop for like 30 minutes to charge or like an hour to charge. That's insane to me. You know, that's why gasoline cars are still very popular in America. Because first of all, there's not enough charging stations. Number two, the charging is not as fast. In China, you can get electric cars and you can switch batteries now, right? Like my sister owns a car in Shanghai where it's not. You can also charge, but it's called it's called Neo. That's the brand of the car where they don't use the majority of it. I wouldn't say majority of it. One popular way of charging the battery wasn't charging it, switching battery. They have battery switching stations. You go there, you get in a line. It's like 5 minutes. Sometimes it can be long, depends on how many people need to change batteries. But most time when I went, I waited for like 3-4 minutes, and the entire experience is really futuristic too. You sit in the car drives, pulls itself up, it's fully automatic, right, into the battery switching station. I would say, yeah, and 3-4 minutes later, your car is done. It's a fully charged battery, completely switch into your car, and you drive away. Like America simply don't have that, right? And it's also not something, I think it's a cultural thing, not something that's very popular here. And the current administration, Trump administration, also is not a big fan of electric cars in general. So there's just a lot of things against it. But we're now switching away from the topic of the freedom of speech, so I'm not going to continue. The idea is, the point I'm trying to make is from a Chinese immigrant perspective, the freedom of speech, you can easily argue in China, you can discuss more things and not get canceled. Right? Like basically regarding social issues, a lot of times you can go online and see a lot of people debate about it and their life is not threatened, right? They can still go on with their job. They can still go on with their life. They understand they don't discuss certain things. They don't discuss about the state, for example, don't discuss politics. And again, not too many Chinese people are interested in that anyways, but they can discuss a lot of other things, social issues, social matters or whatnot, different gender issues. That's totally fine online. You're completely safe. Where in America, your life is literally on the chopping block if you discuss those things, right? So from a observer standpoint, that's what I meant when I say freedom of speech in America is totally a fraud. It's what is advertised, but in reality, your life is threatened when you say that kind of stuff. When you try to use your freedom of speech, yeah, it may not be from the government. Who knows? It might be. There's so much crazy stuff happening behind the scene. We don't know, right? What is not. It's still debatable how exactly Charlie Kirk was killed. There's a lot of conspiracy out there. The idea is, it's just not really freedom of speech when you just have this overshadowing feeling your life is in danger when you say stuff, in America. So that's my point. But do I appreciate that's what's offered by the founding fathers from the First Amendment in the Constitution? Absolutely. I love the idea. That's why people come here. One of the reasons why people come here in the first place. But I would argue most of the immigrants came here for economic reasons, right? And then they come here, work hard, build a family, build I would say career path for themselves, for their families. That's the reason. That's why we can look at this type of things from a non-biased observer standpoint and just share what I think, what we're experiencing. So that's it. That's the take. Share your opinion. By the way, I want to say that I'm not the most knowledgeable at all. In fact, the opposite of it, right? I was a civil engineer who turned an entrepreneur myself in North America region. And then I just share stuff that I think are common sense, right? I look at cultural things that's fun, that's interesting, that's like kind of spicy, and I shared it with the community. I share my take of it. I don't want to get too political. Please educate me if you think certain good points, and I love good points. If you have really good points that you wanna share with me, please leave a comment down below, and I'm really interested in learning, right? Like I love to learn new things and new perspectives. In fact, that's why I think it's such a shame that Charlie Kirk got killed, because he had some really, really spicy points. I love good debates because it educates me. That's what making me think. Not just Charlie Kirk, but sometimes from his opposition. Because frequently his opposition, like people who debate him, will all have really good points as well that make people think, and they're like, okay, well, this guy actually made a really good point here that I think Charlie Kirk doesn't really have as strong as an argument. And he is obviously a very intelligent guy. And if he felt pressured with this argument, that means it's a really good argument, right? Same as a lot of other debates that happen in colleges as well. I love listening to debates. So if you have really great points, leave a comment down below, let me know, and then let's have a great conversation together. So with that being said, Dave signing off, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.